let's go ahead and get started, and we'll just kind of bring them in as we go. Well, I think everybody is wondering what the hell is going on in this crazy world of ours right now. Who has the answer? Well, we're looking for it. Now, I think this is a really good opportunity to just idea share and get some insight from all of us. So I think, I haven't timed it, but I'll say a few things. We have a few slides, and then we're going to just really try to get into some dialogue. Just hear from you guys about what you're seeing, what that means to you, how you're feeling, how your clients are feeling, what we can do to support one another as a company and as an industry, as we kind of transition through the next chapter. A little bit of what we're going to talk about today is the notion that the sky is falling is not the case. We don't have data points to suggest the sky is falling. What we do have some data to suggest is that it is going to get more challenging for the market as a whole. But that doesn't mean that it's going to get more challenging for us. And I'm going to provide, well, I should say, not necessarily more challenging, but I think we're up to the challenge. I'll say it differently. I think we're up to the challenge. So I'm going to give you some data points about what we've done historically, where I think we are now, and where I think we're going to go. And then we're going to have a lot of opportunity for people to share their thoughts and ideas. And I'm going to be ruthless as far as participation. So if people don't start asking, you're going to get called on, just like class. So we're going to lock the door. Padlocks. I've already called the fire marshal. They're totally good with it. But no, we really do want to have a robust dialogue, because it's now more than ever that our sense of community as a company is going to be critical for our success. We need to lean on one another and take the skills and the experience and the attributes that we have, not only from the standpoint of the practice of real estate, but being really good and gracious and giving people, and kind of dig in together, because there's a lot of opportunity here to outperform the market. So let's dig in. So let's go here. I'm going to give you a little bit of an idea about what we did last month. So this is one transaction off. So we ended up at 2. There was a 315,000 that closed, and we got like 150,000. So we're going to get to about 108,200,000, which is going to end up being about 1.5% off in dollars in September. Now that to me is not the sky is falling. That is a modest correction. That is different than the sky is falling. Total size 325. Okay, so we were down 13 point, let's say call it 2% in size. That's not perfect. Okay, let's be honest. We don't want to be down in size, but we outperformed the market, and we'll talk about that. So this is a good snapshot of where we were at. Interestingly enough, our GCI down a little bit more, 4.35%. On this too. Now that'll go down a little because we have 2 more transactions that aren't in there, but roughly 3.5 to 3.6%. And so we gave up a slight bit of per side revenue. So we have historically averaged 2.72% per side. We're at 2.7% this year. In this market, it was more difficult to get listings, and there was a slight adjustment in what the market would bear for that, and that's reflected in these numbers. That said, and I said this in our market update the last time, I'll put our productivity per side relative to commissions with anybody in the city, because we have actually held the line better than anybody else. And that's attributable to the fact that we have high producing, really smart, capable agents, and they are making the difference. And we're not giving up as much ground because we're prepping our listings, we're staging, we're making sure that we have professional photography. We're making sure that the properties are market ready in the sense that landscaping is looking right, what have you, and our listings outperform others. And we can prove that with the data because our average sale price is higher than the markets. And these are just facts. This is not conjecture. We'll be able to demonstrate that. So let's go on to the next slide. Year to date. So year to date, we have sold through September 30th, or excuse me, this is quarter. This is the quarter. This is incorrect. So let's go to, this is incorrect because this is the year to date, but I'll talk to it. We've done $936 million today, okay, as opposed to $868 million through the first 3 quarters of last year. So I bet that's for the first 3 quarters, a 7.84% increase. Our units are off 3,023 to 2860. Units are off 5.39%. If you aggregate those numbers, our average sale price has increased to over 13%. So that's how you arrive at these numbers. So again, $25 million in adjusted gross commission income, over 23,951, an increase of 5.4%. That to me does not say that the sky will fall. So again, do we have challenges? Are things evolving? Is it going to get a little bit more challenging as we move forward than it has in past data? Yes, but we haven't seen a demonstrative precipitous fall in revenue. At least we've seen some unit fall, but we have not seen a precipitous fall in revenue. And so I just wanted to provide some perspective as it relates to what we're doing and what you're all doing, because so often I think in this environment, as things have evolved, we get kind of the heck beat out of us by all these different sources of information, and we're hearing it from our buyers and sellers how tough it is and how difficult it is, and we're seeing price reductions, and we're taking all the kind of behavioral and communicative information, and we're somehow trying to suggest that that reflects in the data. And it gets easy to get mired into this, oh, geez, things are terrible. I'm not worthy. I'm underperforming my potential. The market's underperforming its potential. We're in a bad place. And that's just not what the data is demonstrating. It's just not. So I think it's important to have a reset and to think through things from the perspective of what's really happening. Be honest about what our obligations as realtors and as professionals are to try to continue to be successful, and be realistic about what that's going to take, but also understand that the potential is there and that we just have to outperform the market. And so the theme that I want to bring through all this is we will control our own destiny. And we're going to look at some data from the past and the present to demonstrate that we've already outperformed the market previous to this. So why the heck can't we outperform it in the future? And we need to understand it from that perspective. So let's go to the next slide, please. So this is the same one, so we'll go to the next one. Okay, so we've got some really cool data through trend graphics. This is just a graphic, and it shows, you can't really see exactly what it shows, but on Zoom, they'll be able to see a lot more. And if you want to go back and kind of look at the bar graph, if you want to rewatch it, or people that are probably nobody will want to rewatch it, God, but they might want to at least the people that didn't watch it on the recording, they'll be able to see it. But at any rate, let's go to the next slide, because it kind of demonstrates the data. So interesting. So the current versus previous month, I don't care about that. That doesn't really mean anything to us, because we have markets that are evolving. The only statistic that I think is somewhat relevant from that is the change in for sale inventory, which is 2455, which is 6.2% increase. Now that's relevant for a month, right? I mean, that's a relevant movement in availability of inventory in 1 month. But I think what's probably more important to look at is kind of the month-on-month, year-on-year data. Because if you look at September 22nd, September of this year versus September of last year, inventory has increased 38.4%. Okay, so now people are like, oh my God, 38.4%. That's amazing. Wow, we've got a glut of homes on the market. We're in big trouble with our inventory level. Well, we're not, because we're at 1 point. So that puts us at 1.3 months of inventory. And a market in equilibrium is going to be, depending on which pundit you believe, 4 or 5, maybe even 6 months of inventory. So the notion, so when people start talking about this precipitous drop in price, it's like, okay, you can't have a precipitous drop in price when you don't have an inventory level that's meeting the market. So yes, Fannie Mae has allocated their projections for 23, saying that they think prices are going to drop 1.5% nationwide. So just to reiterate, 1.5% price reduction nationwide. I personally, and God, that's why we shouldn't report these things. I personally think that it's likely that we will outperform. I don't think we are going to go up 12 and 13% as far as pricing proceeds month on month that we're going to see in these graphics. But I do think we're going to have a normalization, but I would anticipate more of a steady kind of normal inflationary increase of 2 to 3% in 23. I could be wrong. We could underperform that, but I don't think so, because if you look at the markets that are vastly underperforming where they were previously, Phoenix, for example, which I alluded to last, their inventory levels have spiked substantially. They don't see 38% increases. In some cases, they see 100, 150% increases. So at the end of the day, people get divorced, people retire, people move out of state for other jobs. And if we don't have the inventory to support that, there's going to be enough demand for that product, although that demand is waning, there's no question, to not have those prices fall on their face in the near term. And that's somewhat conjecture in my opinion, but that's why in this kind of market, in a Midwestern market, generally we don't get too high, generally we don't get too low. And when we were having price increases of 13% year on year and 40% over 3 years, some markets were having nearly that in 1 year. And so you look at markets like Phoenix that I'm familiar with, they had 28, 29, in some areas of the market, 30% annual increases for 2 years. Well, yeah, in those markets, does it make sense as inventory is growing tremendously and demand is waning? Does it make sense that they might give back a little bit? Yeah, that makes a heck of a lot more sense than 40% over 3 years. All that being very robust for a Midwestern market, I think you have to put those numbers into perspective. So the other things that I think are somewhat telling about this is, yeah, 1,649 listings sold in 22, 1,939. Volume was down, 15%. So that's relevant. That we have 15% less sales. Interestingly enough, if you go back and look at our data, we're down more like 13 and change. So we outperformed that by about 11 or 12%. Pended, another one, a little alarming, admittedly. 1,392 pended in 22, 1,793, down 22.4%. So that trend line, theoretically, is going to be more significant. Now, what's behind those numbers? Was there a little bit of a inclination to make that not maybe is quite as significant as it seems? New construction. There's going to be less new construction deals, custom new construction deals in the ground theoretically in September than there were in September of the following year. So those would contractors pending. So that's an issue. Now, I'm still a strong believer, just so the new construction people don't get mad. I'm a huge believer in new construction. This interest rate environment will pass. We still, if you talk about any economist that's done evaluation of our market, they will tell you that we have a huge shortage of developable dirt and that we are way behind the curve still from 2010 as far as getting that dirt to market. And if you look at a 10-year kind of projection as far as people coming into our communities and relative to the land that's available that will be developable in a reasonable period of time, that we still have an incredible shortage. And actually, the forward-thinking people right now are still out finding farms to buy because this will pass. This interest rate environment will pass, and we will have, again, a very robust, in my opinion, in the relatively near term, in my opinion, have still a very robust new construction environment. So I don't want this near-term hiccup in September to overshadow or misrepresent my opinion about new construction moving forward in the somewhat near or midterm, because I believe that we are still going to be underserved from the standpoint of houses, just mainly because of the dirt available. Yes.
I'm just curious. Back 15 years ago, we were running on any given day 5,500 to 6,000 houses available in Douglas and Sarpy County. Do you know how many units we sold in those years relative to like what's the ratio today versus that? It had to be.
It's a wonderful question. You know, in actuality, and because the GPR MLS aggregated, which makes it a little bit more difficult. It used to be, and we can break that out from Omaha to Lincoln.
At least you could do Douglas, Sarpy County.
Yeah.
and have pretty good-
There's no question, and I think if you go back to 2008, it's so funny that you asked the question, because we just had a infill new construction developer ask the very same question, because they're thinking about absorption rates, which is basically what you're talking about. And when you think about absorption rates, if you look at it historically, there weren't a lot more units in the ground. So if we had 6,000 units versus this has 2,400, and that's including Lincoln, so call it, it's always 75%. So whatever your math. So if we have 1,800, you know, if we have 1,800 in available houses, and equilibrium is, you know, 4,500 or 5,000. One time we had 6,000 or 7,000. To Ann's point, I don't know that our absorption rates were, as far as units in the ground, this 22, we'll get to this but this 22,000 units, which aggregates, let's say, to 44,000 sides for the GPR MLS as a whole. So take 75% of that for Omaha proper, or Omaha, the surrounding Omaha areas. If you look at that, I don't believe that in the Great Recession, that those absorption rates as far as units that got sold were demonstrably greater than what we've had. I think even lower.
Yeah, what I'm saying is, I think we're still far better off than we were at that point.
Well, there's no comparison, and I appreciate the comment and the point, because it kind of plays into this narrative that I've been hearing, which is, oh my gosh, you know, 2008 all over again. Here we are, you know, we have a bubble and all that kind of discussion. And there's two fundamental points, and I appreciate you bringing up the absorption rate issue, Ann, because it's so indicative of the two biggest differences. Housing caused that crisis. Housing has not, in the inflationary environment of itself, that has not been a housing issue. The lending environment and you know, the teaser loans, the no underwriting, that caused all that speculation, which caused all that activity, which created those greatly inflated prices, which led to that problem. And that is different than today. The other thing I think is important to remember is, as a result of that, those units and the amount of inventory was so vast that those prices had to come down substantially, because people had the pick of their litter. You could literally look at 10 houses, go, I'm going to write $50,000 under on 10 of them, and the one that says yes, that's the one I'm going to buy. That's how it works that's how it works in practicality, right? If you're an investor and there's 10 houses and you got to just wait for, all you need are 20. All you needed was the first person to blink. You had a deal, right? And then, okay, and so then what happens? Well, then that's a new comp. And then we're working off that. And then the REO comes in, bank-owned properties, and they're playing against that comp. And then they're saying, well, we got to be 5% under that comp. And you can kind of see that's a path to nowhere, right? Or a path to somewhere, but nowhere we want to be. So that, I think it's a great question. Absorption rates are a great question. And at the end of the day, absorption is really critical, because if inventory levels don't increase, it speaks to that point. It's hard to have a fractured market in the sense of precipitous price reduction, because some people just have to move regardless of whether we have a 7.5% interest rate or not. Which, incidentally, Alan Howard was kind enough to share with me. We looked at some data this morning. Isn't it interesting that 7.76% is the average interest rate over the last 30 years? So again, the psychology becoming reality. These ideas versus reality. Now, is it a vast departure from 3.5%? You better believe it. Is it really hard for us to get our heads around it? And when we have buyers that we're looking, and when interest rates were in the 4, 5, even 6% range, hard to get your head around. I know that Neil, you deal with this every day, and you're thinking through it. The psychology is probably as critical as the reality. But I appreciate the question. It's good stuff. So, okay, well, let's go back just for a second. Excuse me, sorry. Okay, so what's happening so far? Now, this isn't as good. This is almost irresponsible because 12 days does not a month make, and it's a little bit of a, but I just wanted to kind of get some perspective. If you look at this, we had 2,490 houses for sale yesterday and 1,900 last year. So look at, interestingly enough, look at that increase. It's only 31% increase in inventory. Okay. And then we have sold. Look at sold. That looks horrible, right? And that will normalize. Nobody jump off a bridge. It takes a little while for, sometimes to get the data in. So this will normalize some. That's going to come down. Can't cover it. And that's why I hesitated to put it up, but couldn't stand myself and did it. So, and then you look at kind of same thing. So what will those normalize to? About half that reduction. Okay. So we've got, and then we've got the pending status for the year versus pending status last year, 10%, sold 5.4% now. So those numbers are not demonstrably different from what I showed you about our numbers, other than we just do a little bit better, because you guys do. So that's the way it is. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so what about monthly averages? So this is something that I wanted to talk through because, again, I think we need to have an honest conversation about the narrative relative to what's happening. And people say, well, and we're going to talk about it in a little bit more detail, and I can't wait till we get the cue that everybody talking about it, because I think we're going to get some great perspective. But this notion that prices are, are falling. Why, people ask me, why do I see all these price reductions and yet the data doesn't tell us that? And it's pretty intuitive if you think about it. All the comps on the ground are being priced at those peaks. So let's say we had a $280,000 house listed for $280,000, sold for $320,000, and then everybody's comping off that incredible increase of that $280,000 to $320,000, and the seller's saying, well, that sold for $320,000, and this is a sell. Well, we better be $330,000 or $340,000, and all of a sudden you have to have price reduction, and people say, well, yeah, but then prices are going down. No, they're not. List prices we haven't caught up intellectually as realtors or as sellers, maybe more importantly, with the notion that things aren't going to increase at 15, 16, 17% forever. So that's why you see these price reductions. It's because the houses are priced correctly to begin with. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But if you see this, by the way, again, I don't like partial data, so I'm not even going to talk to October 1st. But September, interesting. 288,325. This is the entire, this is Lincoln, this is everything. 12.9% increase. Those are the numbers. I mean, at the end of the day, those are the numbers. So to suggest somehow that prices are going down. Now, do I think that the pendings that are going in now and the pendings that are going to go in the fourth quarter, do I see this? No, I don't. But I also don't see. These are sold. These are closed. So these are closed sales. So the average September 1st to September 30th of 2021, 288,000. Average sale price September 1st to September 30th, 2022, 325,214, 12.9% increase. And in August, it was actually a little less. Isn't that weird? So, this is just get a Paragon. I mean, these are the numbers. I have no reason to say otherwise. So it's very interesting. So again, those are the numbers, and that's the reality. Okay, let's go to the next slide, please. So this is us. Okay, so August 1st through the 30th, 2021, 280, 319, 13.9% increase. September 294, 333, 13.4%. So we have consistently kind of outperformed. This again, I would love it if we would end at 362,000. Might be a bit of a pipe dream, but that would be one. Okay, so that's that. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is kind of getting into, so this is the raw, this is the cheerleader stuff, but I think it's important that we talk about it. If you think about the average number of sides, so you got 22,000, let's say, homes that get sold, okay, and then you're going to have 21,000 of those and change that are going to be buyer represented. Dual agency is going to be in the $43,000 number, but once in a while you get that blank, right? They don't have representation. They're a customer and there's no real comment. So that's where the math is slightly skewed. In 2020, we have 4,600 renters. This is the entire GPR MLS. That's 9.35 sides per roof. Okay. 2021, slightly increased 9.46 sides per roof. I think this is where it's going to go based on the projections that we see. We're going to give up slightly, almost a unit, 0.8 of a unit per realtor.
23.
Pardon me?
23. On the
Well,
bottom.
this is 23. It says 20. Yeah. I think. This is what we're thinking we're going to end up this year, and this is 23. So, oh, excuse me. Yeah, you're right. Correct. So that's 23. Throw rotten fruit in that direction. I would never do that. Because I'm perfect, of course. Aren't we all? Just kidding. Audra, by the way, Audra threw this together in about 38 seconds because I'm a disorganized mess. So I can project all my crap onto her. Thank God for Audra. I appreciate her because she didn't have enough time to even do this, and she may have. So this is just me kind of anticipating what I think could happen in 23. I think we're going to lose. There's going to be some attrition in Aiken Town, and I think that it's possible that we could go down to slightly less than 8 sides per realtor as a market as a whole. Okay, I think that this is probably reasonable given the data points that I've analyzed, and I think people much smarter than me that I've gotten input on, and I think that's reasonable. So let's put that in perspective for a second and go to the next slide. Look at what we do. 14.3 sites per agent in 21. Already 10.4 homes per agent in 22. We might give up 0.6, which outperforms the market by the end of the year. But the most important point is, think about this, 14.3 sites. So let's say you do 2 deals. Let's say you do 102 deals. This is nothing more than math, and it's showing 0.6 of a house. It's not even possible to sell 0.6 of a house. So my point is, it illustrates this point. This data is nothing more than a psychological impediment that we put in our minds. If we want to sell 50 houses, okay, and there's 44,000 sides transacted. I hate to break it to everybody, as important as we all think we are, you're not statistically relevant. That sounds like a mean thing. I'm trying to make this point. Your specific success as an individual, because the market is so vast, is totally in your own hands. These statistics, they do nothing more than prove it out. 0.6 of a house. Can't even sell 0.6 of a house. It makes the point. It proves the point. The point being is that if we're less than 0.1% of the market, how can the aggregation of that market be relevant? Because if you do 50 deals and you want to do 2 more, that's just that many more calls, that many more meetups, that many more potlines, that many more civic responsibilities, that many more. That's that much more discipline that you have to participate in. But this market is not going to hold anybody back. We are the only ones who can hold each other back. Our own heads and our own minds, our own psychology. The sky is not falling. It's only falling if we let it fall in our own mind. We can outperform the market. We already do. We're 50% better than the average realtor in the MLS. You're already, actually, we're going to be 60% better already. In 22, I think. You're 50 to 60% better. Why is it a big deal to be another 10% over that better or another 20% over that better? You're already better. How much better are we going to be? I would say let's be much better. right? Let's be much better. Okay, next one. Home pricing. So this is a little bit more about the shifting market. We talked about it a little bit. Pete and Jen Manhart said this the other day. I thought it was that. So we got Manhart. Current data is gold. See what is happening with your direct competition, closest comp pending by house style and structure and geographic proximity. We so often go straight to sold. We so often even go straight to pendings. What about active? Are we calling our fellow realtors and talking to them about how much traffic they're getting? Do we have 4 showings and have those people bought? Did we call those agents and find out if they bought? If they bought, what did they buy? And why did they buy it? And are we priced correctly? Because we're Midwest nice, right? How many times you call and you're like, and somebody calls and goes, what do you think of the house? Is it priced correctly? And you're like, you're not gonna buy it. I'm just gonna tell it. Right? Because you're not going to tell them the price is too high because you don't want to be an ass, right? But you're not being an ass, but a lot of times we don't, right? We're just like, whatever, because then she's going to ask me why I think that, and I don't want to listen to all that stuff. So, so a lot of times you have to ask that probing. Well, it's true, right? I mean, it's not true. So we're Midwest nice, right? It's what we are. It's okay. 99% of the time it works, just in this one's not so good. So we have to ask probing questions, and we have to find out why it is that some. And by the way, isn't it wonderful to ask these questions before we list it, so we're not in trouble? But we're, I got somebody that lists a house might have this problem right now. I don't know who that would be, but that didn't get the list price correctly, and has got a little bit of problem. I don't know who would do that, but somebody might do it. So the point being is that the more we do our homework on the front end, the more problems we do on the back end. And 3-month-old data is a dinosaur. Tell your sellers what happened in the summer is wholly irrelevant. It doesn't matter what happened this summer. It is over with. What matters is what's happening right now and what's happening today. And data is of as much critical importance in real time today as it relates to pricing as it has ever been. Because with the exception of the financial meltdown, where basically our market shut down, which was, what was that? October of 2018, or excuse me, 2008, ironically October, funny, shocker. So 14 years ago, there has never been a time that I've been doing this where I've seen a shift this quickly, where I've seen the things, with the exception of that. Kind of is a little bit different when one day you think you got a bank and the next day you don't know if that money is in there anymore. That's big. That's bigger than we're at right now. But other than that, this is the biggest shift I've ever seen. So data is so important to get the data. And price adjustments need to be strategic. We can't lower in 5 days and think, then we didn't price it correctly. If the strategy is, we're going to see how we do through the first weekend and then we'll lower right away, I would respectfully submit to you that I think that's real estate malpractice. And the reason I think it's real estate malpractice is, A, it sends a terrible message to the market. It sends a terrible message to our seller that we don't know what the hell we're talking about if we're projecting the strategy. And it's just not really great business acumen from the standpoint of suggesting to the market where your seller will ultimately end up. It looks like panic selling. And so I think that strategy, I think people are like, well, they really want it, so I'm just going to put it at that. And, some markets will get multiple offers, and some markets, things are sitting for a month, and I'm just going to kind of play it in the middle. And I think it's a little too high, but it'll probably be okay. I'm here to tell you folks, it will not be. It will not be. So I feel pretty strongly about that point. Next slide, please. Okay, valued advisor. More now than ever, your expertise is not only necessary, but will be rewarded. People, sellers, buyers, they want meaty information. They want things that are relevant. They want these statistics. They want the data. They want best practices. They want strategy. They're yearning for it. This notion of, oh, well, it was okay because everything sells in a day, so it's okay. We're going to give that listing to my uncle's brother's cousin's nephew because it's going to be okay. It will sell. They don't think that way today. They're not thinking that way anymore. So we need to be able to demonstrate our value. Be educated, provide meaningful data and trends to your sphere. You are all experts. Make sure you are demonstrating your competence in data, economics, and real estate trends, all things home related. Demonstrate your ability through walking the walk, not prior success or financial prowess. Nobody on social media cares that somebody drives a fancy car. Nobody cares that they live in a fancy house, and nobody cares that they go on fancy vacations. What they do care about is that you're humble, real, a meaningful person, civically minded, a responsible member of your community, and that you know something. So if you demonstrate your knowledge in a humble way, demonstrate your passion for things in a positive way. There's two ways to be passionate about an issue. You could be negative about somebody else's position, or you could be positive and impactful about your own. There's so many examples of that where on social media, instead of somebody talking about a solution, they talk about a problem. Be the person that talks about the solution, not the problem. Almost always, solutions are 90% okay with people. Problems are 50% of a divide, meaning 50% don't like what you're going to say and 50% do. But if you have a positive spin on something, I'm not going to give you an example because I don't want to be part of the 50%. if you put something in place and you're positive about it, almost everybody can agree with a positive solution in most circumstances. But if you have a negative approach to that issue, 50% of the people you're going to alienate. We talked about, there was a little bit of consternation and disagreement about some of the rhetoric at the Page event. I think it was disappointing in one sense, but so positive in the other, because some of what came out of it was this. There is authenticity is important. And I'm not asking anybody to say that they're not who they are. I'm never going to ask you to ever do that. But isn't there a way where we can demonstrate who we are and demonstrate what we're for in a positive way and win the hearts and minds? Because you're never going to win the hearts and minds of the opposition with a negative approach to it. You're only going to win the hearts and minds of somebody who thinks differently from you with a positive approach to it. So I would empower you to think about it in terms of what do you know that is meaningful and powerful? Because if I'm getting online and somebody's got some real meaningful statistics, not the crap that I put that's just mind numbing, but like something that's relevant and good for them to know, and then an action plan with that, and maybe some success. I'll violate my own tenant here, and maybe some success with how you utilize that strategy. You know, sold in one day for $20,000 over the asking price does not demonstrate competency. It's puffing. It doesn't say anything to anybody. Everybody can put that up. This says, hey, I'm thinking about what we need to do to make your life better and to get you the best result and get you on to the next chapter. That's what people want to know about. Hey, I'm passionate about animals. I love animals. That's great. That resonates with certain people. I'm passionate about homelessness. That resonates with some people. I'm passionate about the fact that everybody should be free to worship the way they want. That's going to resonate with some people. And I'm not saying don't be authentic. I'm just saying be positive in being authentic. There's so much negativity out there. Be positive. Share what is so important to you. A problem or a negative reaction to something never change that problem. It could shine a light on it, but it's always a negative light. Do something about the problem, have a solution, be a solution minded. So, and that last point, I think I beat that dead horse. So let's move on, please. Now, I've always said this, and I think it's more true now than ever. Building somebody else's business is the absolute fastest path to referrals. All of you have 5, 10 people that you admire and appreciate outside the real estate industry that either are salespeople that eat what they kill or are business owners, small business owners. And what's the fastest track to their heart? What is the thing that makes us illuminate every day actually getting a referral from somebody? There is not, I would take the feeling that I get from somebody thinking that I was of enough value that they wanted to do business with me over a check any day. Because the check comes and goes, but that feeling and the reverberation of those relationships, they keep feeding us forever. Not only our financial opportunities, but our soul and our being. That allows us to be, our very best. And so when you're thinking about people's businesses and you're on social media and you're always endorsing people that, by the way, you would only use their products or services, not falsely saying, oh, I'm going to give so-and-so because they give me referrals, even though they won't show up for 26 weeks and they'll leave the thing half done or whatever, not just for your own benefit, but people that you honestly use, highlighting those businesses, supporting those businesses, recognizing those businesses, those individuals. I'm telling you, it is the greatest battle. I've always said, Jeff Royal taught me this at Dunny Bank. He was selling loans out of the back of his Jeep Cherokee. They were a $20 million bank. They're a $500 million bank today, and he owns another $500 million ancillary banks. And what he did was he would day by day, week by week, sit in Dundee and coffee shops and put people together. And guess what? He put a engineer with a developer. Guess where they went and borrowed their money? Guess where they put their deposits? If you are if you are putting people together and you are creating value and you're creating synergy, the opportunities will only come as plentiful as you can imagine.
Tom?
Yes.
Can I ask a question? So,
Sure.
You've seen other brokerages, we've seen other brokerages stick signs in their agent's yard just to puff, right? Hey, look at, I'm a top performer broker, right? We've all seen it. We look at it, we cringe a little bit, or we look at it and say, wow, a little bit, whatever. What if we had a Be Better Day that lined up the entire course of this brokerage for all of us to just 5 posts, one day and call it a Be Better Day? What kind of splash on the algorithm would you make? What kind of market statement would you make? How much more values come out that day? If we all did it simultaneously on the same day, that would be the talk of the town.
I love it. Let's execute on it. I think it's a great idea. I would just add this. It needs to have everything to it. Civic commitment, all the different elements of things that are meaningful to people's lives. But I think it's a magnificent idea, Jay. I think it's absolutely magnificent. Yeah, I think we build a committee and do it. And we can do it. The logistics of it are beyond me because I'm not smart enough, but we got people that are smart enough. So we'll figure that out. But I love that idea. That's the kind of leadership and the kind of ingenuity that will allow us to rise above a more challenged market. That's the kind of thinking, the creativity, and the commitment to your community and to your brand and your personal brand that will make the difference. So I love that. So it's all of this stuff. Have you spent 5 hours every week on business development? And then we go down all these things that we've discussed. And the last thing is the phone rings for those that dial it. Right? The phone rings for those that dial it. People that are ultimately going to receive the benefit of other people's businesses because they've reached out and made connections with them and have earned their trust. And you can't do that by being silent. You can't do that by sitting at your computer on Facebook giving a thumbs up. Nobody cares, folks. They just don't. We could think they do, but they got 38 other thumbs up and 7 of them were realtors. So unless you have a really cool thumb, which I don't know that people can differentiate on a computer screen, and maybe I'm wrong because I'm not necessarily the most savvy in environment. I think you're kind of Me Too. And guess what? Me Too in this sense is not good. Being the norm, being average, being ho-hum, hoping for the phone to ring doesn't work in a shifting market. What works in a shifting market is being extraordinary. What works in a shifting market is doing just a little bit more. And people ask, how do people get to 30 million, 40 million? Or some people don't want to be that way. I get it. That's totally the promise of real estate is whatever it is for you. But they ask, why do they, more times than not, how do they do that? Everybody wants a silver bullet. And the fact of the matter is, here's the secret, which is not a very good secret, but here's the secret. They do everything a little bit better than everybody else. And you know how they do that? It's not because they're intellectually superior. It's not because they're perfect or talented or better dressed or all those wonderful things, or drive a fancier car or live in a fancier house. It's none of those things. The reason they do it is because they try just a little bit harder and they're purposeful in their behavior. So that's how I think we transcend this model. Next slide. Okay, there isn't any more slides. There's the best slide. Perfect, sort of perfect. We wanted 20, but we got 15. Let's hear it. Do we have anything in the chat or do we have anything out here? Let's hear it. What do people got?
There's some in the chat.
Okay.
And people are loving the idea. They're saying they're in.
Oh, on Jay's thing?
Yeah, KDA loves the idea. Kristen Lill, I'm in. Patrick, I'd love to be involved in this.
Great.
Trace loved this. I'd love to be involved. All right.
We got it. We got our committee. Anything else? Anything else? Yeah, we do need to get going on. Kelly.
I have a question about new construction and what your thoughts on that are. I know that we're not, we're saying that we're not gonna be seeing this big dip in pricing and stuff like that, but a lot of new construction, especially customization, construction has gone up extremely high. Times have also become very long. Some of them are taking 16 to 18 months. Are your thoughts, because I have not worked through a shift in the market like this. I've been doing this for several years, but haven't had this type of shift. Your thought with new construction, do you think that prices are going to finally just kind of balance out and we're not going to have all these increases? Do you think that the labor market's still going to cause that to happen? Do you think we're still going to have a long period of time to wait for these things to be done? I know I just threw a lot of stuff at you.
What do you guys think? Let's hear what I'm happy to answer, but
I was with Stacy Reed last night. She was sitting across the table representing HRT. 12-month lead time. They're not worried about the number. I'm not selling charity, by the way, I'm just sharing with you. Our clients, we've sat with 3 other buildings with lead times of 16 to 18. One even said price fluctuation, all the scary stuff. I think the reason why this builder can do it is because of their size. They're not, they have their own crews, they have their own loyal custom contractors for the entire 24, 25 years. I really challenge them on supply chain. They're playing some new parts and windows. And at the end of the day, even if it's 12 to 14 months, it's a really good timeline. He said about numbers specifically, listen, I'm going to share the news with you if when we dig in spring and the prices go down, I'm going to share that with you. If it goes up, I'm going to share that with you as well. But his opinion is he's able to hold on to his crew, his people in his business model because he sees it calming down. So he just got color windows in 4 weeks. So if that tells you anything. Color windows were 18 to 24 weeks lead time. And the question is why is because they're starting to get it done.
Another one I heard about, this is more the second previous thought to be, but the home company is talking about not things are falling out of contract, but they're not stopping production. So they're going to kind of roll into more spec type houses and just keep up as quickly as they can. Where some other those type buildings or builders in that price range kind of starting to pull back. They're doing the exact opposite. And supposedly, again, this is kind of second hand. They have tons of funding and tons of money to use to keep this going, so they're just going to push as hard as they can.
so I think from a purely kind of logical economic place, Kelly, to answer, first of all, what a wonderful topic to discuss. You can't get much more relevant than that today. Look at what the Fed funds rate is. So that's affecting everything, right? That's affecting people that are building commercial buildings right now. That's affecting people that are, the bond market's responding, right, for people that are getting mortgages. That's affecting business owners that are going to expand our labor force to try to continue to grow their business because their cost of capital is higher. There's going to be a natural retraction. the very goal of the federal funds rate, to raise the federal funds rate, is to slow the economy. Which is a little bit counterintuitive for the supply siders, but at some point, you know, the question, and this is a little bit different answer, but we'll get there. The question is can you fix an inflationary environment without the supply to provide? Because at some point, if there's limited amounts of inventory for all widgets, and there's enough demand to absorb those widgets, then it's very difficult to have those prices come down dramatically. And I think from the standpoint of the Fed and what they're trying to accomplish, that supply side is a bit of a red herring to achieve that. Now, that said, with your particular question, your situation, if you think about it, less homes are going to get built speculatively because some banks aren't going to lend money to people that aren't as well capitalized. So less commercial buildings likely are going to get built because of the environment. There's some crossover in those trades. So there will be less demand on those particular trades. There will be less demand on lumber, windows, all the things that go into those. So as a result of that, the trickle effect would suggest that we'll get more stabilization in price, both in labor and in product, which is really where the lion's share of these increases have come from these local builders. It's not like they woke up one day and said, yeah, this is awesome, we're going to charge another, 30% for this house, because they feel the pressure of that too, right? Now, it's true that there's some margin opportunities on that because they're pricing on top of the pricing, but they're also feeling the effects of that because they have to deal with, think about the time, their human capital, their time. Think about the frustration of somebody who's building a house right now that isn't an 18-month cycle that was quoted a 14-month cycle. Think about the energy that they have to exert to mitigate those frustrations. That's a different issue than we're talking about, but I think it's relevant to kind of get our perspective on it. So they don't love it either, right? Because their job just got twice as difficult. And I think if you talk to many of them, they would give a little bit of the money that they made back in the last 2 years for a little bit of their life, right? Because it's been a hard road for them too. But what I would say is that I think we are going to get greater stabilization in pricing. I think that things are never going to go. I don't think that we're going to say, okay, the average mid-tier 2,200 square foot ranch with a finished basement that was selling for $675 last summer is going to be $625. No, I don't think that's the case. But I think that we will see a much slower increase than we've seen, and if not, it might level off, stagnate, and even go slightly down, only because the cost of the inputs could potentially go down. I mean, with our existing inventory, there isn't any cost to inputs, right? It is what it is. It's market driven. With the new construction increases, those increases have been attributable to external factors, not just market factors. So when people say, well, the prices are going to go down, are they going to go down? Then the question is, why are they going to go down? And I would say they're not going to go down necessarily because demand maybe in the 3-month or 6-month cycle, but I don't think demand is going down in the 3 to 5 year cycle by any means. So then the question is, how much is material costing? How much of a shortage of the labor market is there? And that will dictate it more than the market condition. But then it does get normalized by what that existing house is, right? Because I've always kind of said, it seems like new construction can kind of get a 10 to 12% premium of what that existing house would look like with maybe 10-year tranches on the age of that old one. So you can kind of work off that modeling. But to answer your question is, I think we're going to get some normalization in construction pricing. I don't think it's going to go down significantly, but I don't think it's going to go up.
In an attempt to be informed, I read Inman.
Sure.
They talk a lot about buyer optimism and building permits, but they talk on a national level. I've been curious if we have access to those two metrics just for our market anywhere.
Yeah, so MoMA puts out some data, and for whatever reason, I have never been able to. It's a great question. I need to pose it again. I've never been able to get a really great finite understanding of that permitting, and I need to do a better job of it. It's actually a very fair question. I feel like it's been relatively easy. Trudy, do you remember anything on that? Did you guys, is there a metric other than MOBA that you have ever utilized in the past for permitting?
I think it's public record when some.
It is, yeah, you can go down to the, yeah.
Look at the county records.
Yeah, you go down to the county, but MOBA usually will aggregate those things.
Right.
I need to look, it's a really good question. We need to look into that and see where we're at with permitting. But I think anecdotally, and I think it's a good thing to be able to share with you. What else are you finding on Inman that is stimulating you?
It's pretty doomsday on there,
Yeah.
but I just think we're so much better off in the Midwest.
I've just kind of a general question. I'm hearing more about people going back to the workplace. You know, that was kind of changing for a while for the working from home. Now people are kind of being called back. Do you think that's going to shift like the commercial market and people moving from, we've seen so many 6-bedroom, 5-bathroom ranges that a lot of families are only using because they have extra office space. Do you think that'll change like what we're building and these people moving, you know, closer in again?
It's a great question. I don't know, but I do know this. I would say that this idea of people kind of wanting their own space, because we got to put it into this context, right? People are coming from other markets. So we have to put it in the context of it. I think there was a mind shift, totally stimulated by exactly what you're saying, but I think there was a mind shift at some point in more urban areas that, gosh, you know, I kind of do like the notion of my own space. And I kind of like the idea that instead of having 1,000 square foot flat for 1.8 million, I can have 7,000 square feet and horses and a pool. And I don't know that that is going to go away altogether, because COVID kind of created that thought that they never had before, right? Like, who the hell is going to go to Elkhorn, Nebraska from Manhattan and do that? Well, they are, right? They have. And I think at some level they will continue to. But I think as far as, I think office space is still probably a little saturated. I mean, it's not like people are totally going back. You know, there's going to still be that hybrid where not everybody's going to go back into the office space. So I don't know that. And here's the idiot who's building an office building, right? So good luck with that. If you can all get that to jive in your mind and tell me, and we can have a counseling session for you. But the point is that I don't think that we're going to see a lot of robust commercial building except for owner users. So I think that there's going to be a huge flight to owner users because they want specific buildings in specific areas, which is exactly what we're doing in Elkhorn, right? Why would we do that? Would we speculate on that? Would we build at 30,000 square feet instead of 15,000 and speculate on 15,000? No, we would not do that, right? But we know there's a meaningful reason for us to occupy the space. That's an owner occupant. So I don't think there's going to be a lot of speculation on office. I think there's going to be owner users. I think retail's a mixed bag. I think light manufacturing looks pretty good, you know, because I think there's always opportunities for more innovative products in the marketplace. And I think Omaha is a great place for that. Now, you look at Facebook and all these different companies that, you know, Omaha is a reasonable place for people to live and grow. So I think there's some opportunities for owner users and build a suit and things of that nature that will continue to increase our population and our average earnings and jobs and all those types of things. I just don't know that you know, your John Doe law firm that had 15,000 square feet with 50 associates or 100 or whatever it is, that they're necessarily taking more space. I think paralegals can work from home half the time, and you know, they've got to have somebody answer the phones, but I just don't see those businesses that aren't critical for synergy, everybody coming back. I just don't know that they're ever coming back. All of them. Yeah.
One of the very wise and smart things I think you said today is 3-month-old data is wholly irrelevant. I wrote it down. I put quotes by it. I think that's really true, but that begs the question, we're the experts. For years, we've been using MLS data. What data do we use to help our sellers have a realistic picture of what the price is going?
Yeah.
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 But I had to answer something, somebody, one of my calling friends in, on the West Coast, who are dealing with things, you know, before we do, said one of the biggest shifts that they've made that's been helpful in actually getting home sales is when they're doing their CMAs, is to use asking price only for the last 6 months versus the selling price.
Okay.
And then adjust accordingly,
Right.
dependent upon the current activity, which is what Manhart said. But utilize the current activity, but when you're actually doing the CMAs, and to bring people into reality and then come up and then.
That is very interesting. I like that. I think that is a normalizing factor. And notice what Carol said there, asking price versus sold price, because look at July and look at, you know, this 280s to 320s, and we were still having those. And I think, Trudy, to your point, I think it's, and I appreciate your thoughts on it. I think if you really think about it, it really is getting back to basics. Remember when we did, we're gonna us poor people. Remember when you had to flip the book and there was no there was no internet. And guess what we did? Think about what we did, Trudy. We got on the phone and you called Sybil Bailey.
Yeah.
And you said, hey, Sybil, I know you got that house in Fair Acres and I know it's listed for 400 grand. How much activity have you had? And she said, well, I've had 3 showings. Any feedback on price? Well, we had one person that was going to write, but they said they were going to be a little lower. And some people have loose lips in real estate, right? We love to talk. Who doesn't love to talk? I love to talk. So at the end of the day, you can get almost anything out. If you go to 4 or 5 sources, you can piece together the whole puzzle, a beautiful
Especially if you
puzzle.
use a lot of sugar.
Exactly. And that's another example of why it is so important across companies, across industries, across anything. You just catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. Nobody's any smarter on everything than anybody else. We might have disciplines that we're a little better at or something else, but we're all basically, you know, normal people trying to make a living. So at the end of the day, the nicer you are to your agent on the other side, then, because it's going to come, what comes around goes around. It's an 80-20 business. What comes around goes around, and you're going to need that person just like they need you. And the more you're a giver, the more information. And this is a prime example, looking at current market information. You'd be amazed at what you can surmise from people if you just treat them nicely and ask them nicely.
So how do you think that appraisers are going to handle?
I was just gonna speak to that.
Great.
Yeah, I just had a meeting with an appraiser. She was actually appraising one of my own personal properties, and of course, I want the highest value possible. So I provided her
Unless
with
it's
the
down
ones
to
I thought she should use, and she said, those are garbage. Those are from several months ago when it was a completely different market, and they're pretty much just throwing those out. She said they're only looking for things July or after that have gone under contract, if at all possible. If they have to go back further than that, they're automatically discounting based on market trends, which is sometimes that's as much as 10 to 20%.
So here's what I'm going to tell you about appraisals. This is maybe going to piss some people off, but this is what I'm going to tell you about. We can't be in the business of deciding what an appraiser is going to do. We can only be in the business of getting the highest and the best price relative to where we're at. Now, with one exception, because I know somebody could throw a stout in nation. One exception. In that market we were in, where you could get appraisal gap coverage, if you knew the thing was only worth 3 1/4 and there was only comps to support 3 1/4, and you could get somebody to you had an offer for 350, but you could get somebody to 340. And they would cover the gap, and the other person was at 325 and we're at 345, and they weren't going to cover that gap to 345. Anybody would be an idiot to trade 5 for 20. That to me is, I feel strongly about that. But with that exception, in that particular moment in time, all we can do is price things correctly, get the very best price we can for the house and let the chips fall where they may. The problem with trying to guess appraisal is one person's opinion on sports, guys. One person.
And I'm Mitchell Associates, just so you know, so.
Yeah,
avoid
but-
that.
Well, but I'm just saying, my point being is how, when there's umpteen hundreds of appraisers out there that maybe have never appraised that, and I'm not picking on appraisers, but maybe umpteen hundreds of appraisers out there that have never, ever even done an appraisal in that particular neighborhood or what have you. And some are really great, and some have great confidence, like everything else. Not all appraisers are created equal, and not all realtors are created equal. But the fact of the matter is that I don't think we can run our business and our psychology and get our sellers in a good place by trying to anticipate when one person on one day thinks about the value of the house. We just can't go, that's a rabbit hole, with the exception of the example that I set forth. Kelly.
I was just gonna make a suggestion, it's not so much a question, but now that we're not all running in 18,000 different directions all at one time, some of us probably still are, but not all of us are. I think it's really important that we make sure the information that's put into the MLS is extremely accurate, because I think a lot of times I've had situations where somebody forgets to put in a bedroom, or somebody forgets to put in the floors or whatever, because they're just rushing, and it's gonna sell, so who cares if we know it's in that? I think it's really important that we put that information in, or at least double check whoever's doing it now, to make sure that they're pretty accurate, because we're going to need that information to be as accurate as possible going forward, I think.
I think that's wonderful advice, and I agree with it wholeheartedly, because we should be good stewards of the MLS, because it is the one place that we can be totally collaborative with everybody that are realtors, and we would want the data to be as accurate as possible when we're assessing it, so we need to be good stewards of it and make our data accurate. So I couldn't agree more wholeheartedly. Jerry Alvers, the patriarch of our company.
You mentioned something about clicking pages to bring back numbers. But anyway, what I heard today is real estate really has to change.
Right.
I think two things are very important that you mentioned there, admin and knowledge. And we are always in the business. I don't think where you're at. It's not like talk school at the moment and done. But if you're at a party, you're at the bar having a break, you're talking to a friend on the phone, very easy to talk about real estate. And you never know when that person is asking a question. And I think you have to have an answer whenever that happens. I mean, well, we're going back to, well, it's really what's how are you going to answer that question? I think you need to know that. If you're at a party, you have a boxer, and you see that in operation, and you say, well, I lost two guys last month. I mean, it's just common sense that you gotta be positive. You gotta be ready to answer those questions. The knowledge is
Yeah, great insight, Jerry.
We have another question from Patrick. Any expectations or opinions on home rental prices? Decrease, increase, flat? I'm curious to hear.
So we're gonna,
Aubrey told me I was too cheap.
Jerry, that sounds a little personal. Okay, that's about as close as we can get to our rating.
I was just gonna say, I just got back from BPCon, which is a bigger pocket national conference. So all of the investors nationwide, many are involved in this. And you would not believe how many people are talking about Omaha. So I was hanging out with a girl from Arizona, and she's like, I thought everybody's gonna want to talk about Scottsdale. We're like the, prom queen, whatever. She's like, everywhere I go, it's Omaha. Every table I sat at, every conference, like session I went to, the people are talking about, we still have affordable prices, we still have the rent growth, people are investing in this area. And then I actually ran into a guy in the elevator who had properties in his hand from Omaha. And he's like, oh, you're from Omaha? Can you tell me about these locations? And I was like, no, not that one. And this is why. And so now I'm working with him to sell some investment properties here. So there's still a lot of activity in our area, a lot of good things people are still at.
Because cap rates are better than they are.
They're still crap compared to what they were, but they're better than anywhere else.
So why is it, I'll ask a question. Why is it that it doesn't seem that cap rates are demonstrably going down, even though the cost of money is rising?
because we can charge more here for the price that they can buy it for. I mean, that's
So,
just
so
what I
because,
have.
so what the out of town investors looking at is that even though their cost of funds are going up, the cap rates are still better than what they would surmise in other
Right.
jurisdictions.
And they're getting more creative. They're getting very creative with how they're doing it with some seller financing or some creative financing options. So, you know, people just find a way to do it. And if we've got the inventory and we've got the prices that they want, they're gonna figure out a way to buy in our market. I mean, you're not gonna, we were in California, we were in San Diego, we're talking to California agents, they're not buying in their own market. They're buying in Midwest.
Right. Fair point, good points, great points. Anything else in the chat?
Kristen said that it's hard to hear Jerry.
She also, that was when they were talking about appraisals, that she includes.
Yeah, that Kristen said she also includes when we're talking about appraisals, include days on market and other history with the compass. That is relevant.
Very astute points. Amy,
Right question, right, one of the best students, it's probably the number one question I get all the time.
Great.
I was on a KTM, if you can, you know, that site, for videos and stuff, but they had a gal on there yesterday talking about interest.
sorry, say that again.
Talking about the interest and is it gonna keep going?
Oh, interest rates.
And she was saying that in the last 3 months, we've had our biggest, and she feels like we're not gonna have another incline that fast, that rapid anymore for the rest of the life. I'm curious, we're at 7%, what are you hearing, what are you, that's the number everyone.
The crystal ball. So what I'm hearing from people is that they think that there might be a divestiture from the bond market and the federal funds rate because we're likely going to have another 50 to 75 point boost. I think some people think that if we could see 8, but then I also have heard people think that by the time we get to the late spring and early summer, we're gonna reset. And then what I have said that I feel most comfortable about, which is a long time away, maybe 15 months away, is that there is absolutely going to be a reboot because of the election. So one thing that's wonderful, we can all agree on one thing: politicians want to get elected. And guess what? Everybody is going to try to be the savior of the housing market, because so goes housing, so goes our economy, and so goes interest rates. Theoretically, so goes the robust nature of housing to a certain extent. And both parties, and maybe a third or fourth one that could get invented by then, are going to say that they're going to lower interest rates, and they will. They'll try to put a lot of pressure. And you know, not to get too technical, because I don't know it's terribly helpful. But the government will buy more of those mortgage-backed securities. And that's how it changes. That's how the bond market will ultimately reflect differently on its pricing than the federal funds rate and what we know to be prime and all those types of things, which are a different metric. And so that's where I think there'll be a disconnect. So do I think we're off and running to 8 and 10%? I don't. Because I just don't think that our economy can withstand it. And at the end of the day, they'll juice it, just like they do everything else, and just like we did in COVID, which brought us the inflation. And because at some point, and I say this analogously, and I probably should be careful about it because I don't want to offend anybody, but you remember at the beginning of COVID, the most staunch person was like, you know, masking up, and not that people shouldn't. And this is not to get into the debate. But what we know as a country is that when things become the new normal and it changes people's lives, fatigue sets in. And that's not a criticism of people that, you know, people that wearing masks today, God bless them, and people that never wore them, God bless them. I don't have an opinion on it, and I'm not stating it. What I am saying is that if behavior changes people's lives over time, they have a tendency to grow fatigue. And I think that the economic reality of high interest rates relative to the consumer's approach and relative to the professional's approach that are serving those consumers, that ultimately fatigue will set in on this interest rate environment, and there will be more pressure on the politicians and the people that are in the regulatory environment that are of prowess. This notion that there is a differentiation between and this is not a conservative, liberal, Republican, Democrat thing, but this notion that there's a fundamental departure from these independent acting bodies and the political environment that they serve is a fallacy. It doesn't exist because everything, not political in the sense of politics and getting elected in elections and Republicans and Democrats, but everything is political. Everything, everybody wants to be liked and recognized and what have you. They just do. It's human nature. So ultimately, once the fatigue reaches a fever pitch, we're getting closer. They will do everything in their power to create a subsidization, which is essentially buying all mortgage-backed securities, and interest rates will fall when that breaking point is. But I don't think there's the political will for that in a general sense, because the inflationary environment has been so significant that we don't have that buildup yet to where people are coming with the pitchforks. But they're getting their pitchforks ready, and they're coming at us. That's my opinion. I sure hope I'm right. So, yeah, what time is it?
It's 1:16.
Holy crud, well, people have got better things to do. Okay, so anybody other parting comments, thoughts, criticisms, critiques, insights?
Hey, Tom, how about if we switch to, for the last comment from you or there, to the solution mode of what you see that all us agents, no matter which position you're in, whether they're under 3 years or over 20 years, what's the one thing that you think that everybody's focus should be on right now in order to walk through the middle of this market that we have and it's coming?
And I hate to be redundant, and I hate to steal my friend Jerry's thunder. Knowledge. Be the trusted advisor. Having fundamentally more meaningful things to say, and not becoming a caricature of the industry, not becoming the poster child for the social media glam, but being real in the sense of your knowledge base and seeking out that knowledge, and being real in the sense of who you are and being authentic and being positive, being focused on your positivity. It's been a difficult month with this transition. There's a lot of anxiety and apprehension out there in regard to this market and the circumstances. There's a lot of negative out there in the halls of businesses and buildings, and a lot of negativity within the media and what have you. And that's not a criticism of any media in particular, but negative does sell, and all deference to our friend Brad Inman. If he said, everything was wonderful every day, that would get old, and then you don't have people listening, right? So negativity sells. So we're going to hear the negativity, and we just need to rise above it. We need to have honest conversations about the things that are relevant and that are true. Units are going to be down slightly aggregately, although we say we're not going to be because we can do better. But we also know that how we carry ourselves. The other thing that somebody astutely told me one time, and it was so amazing, and it's so important to remember, we absolutely, our clients mirror us. From the think about it, if you have a cantankerous listing agent that already answers your question before they bring it to their client, how do you suppose they're having that conversation with their client? If they say, I would do that, that's, I would never even consider that, that's ridiculous. That's what they're saying to their client, right? So every time that there's conflict, I always say to myself, if that agent would have presented that information slightly different, would this conversation from the standpoint of, because remember, we're the ones who do it every day. They're following our lead. So even if we think something is wholly unreasonable, instead of saying, I would never do that, I can't even believe, can you believe what they are saying? I think that this might be an overreach. But what if we looked at it from this perspective and we could meet them in the middle somewhere? It's not to our detriment, and it would get them what they want. Then that seller, what's that seller going to say? not necessarily gonna say, I wanna punch him in the nose, I'm gonna say, oh, okay, well, if you think that's best, how many times have you heard that? Well, if you think that's best, what I think's best is presenting the truth to people, but in a manner where they can absorb it and work with it. If we're hyper negative or hyper volatile, our clients are gonna be hyper negative and hyper volatile. If we're calm and reasonable and factual and kind and empathetic, that's what our clients are gonna be. So I think the thing I would say, Carol, to your question, is a flight to quality. Be the very best version of yourself in everything that you do. And you will be amazed at the results you get from your prospects and from your clients and from the other realtors that you're working with. Because reputation matters. And we will be back in an environment, and kind of still are, where they can discern whether or not they want to work with a certain offer based on that realtor. And if you are reasonable and kind and generous and wise and fair, they're going to want to work with you. And if you're not, I'll say it again, you catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. So I think having knowledge, articulating your knowledge in a humble way, being with your sphere, being hyper focused about your interaction with your sphere, presenting value to the marketplace, those are going to be the critical success factors. This is going to be a market of a flight to quality. Those that are embarking upon the process correctly will be disproportionately rewarded. Those that just wait for the phone to ring will get beat up. That's just, I think, the way the world is going. So that's it. Okay.